And what we're just going to share with you today is some of what we've learned and some of the things that work for us, in the hope that some of this may be useful for you as well. Okay, so I'm going to bust some myths first about training staff. And some of the common myths out there include that inductions should provide enough training for support staff. So sometimes organisations or us as family members might go, here's our training, you do your training before you start, and then it's all going to be fabulous because you've learnt everything. And if you've tried that, that generally doesn't work. Another myth is that we can train people just by telling them how to do things. That often doesn't work either. Other people give people written information. So some of us families got some really good stuff written down in manuals, but then are disappointed when they give the manual to someone and find that doesn't actually support them to develop good practice either. And the other idea out there is that there's a one-size-fits-all training. So you can go and do a certificate, or you can do this training, and then you're going to be equipped to work with anyone with a disability. And then we know that's not true either. So it's worth just getting those out of the way. What we've realised in the process of setting up teams where we like their practice is that at the heart of it all is communication. So if we can get communication happening well, then training tends to work and we're able to get what we want, and then the person that's being supported can have what they want. So mostly what I'm going to talk about is how we can communicate most effectively. It's important to make communication your number one goal when it comes to training your staff. I thought we'd do a quick activity, seeing as you're all a bit docile after lunch, get you activated. If you've got a pen and a piece of paper, what I'd like you to do is to draw a bug for me, but I'm going to tell you what the bug looks like, because what I want you to do is to draw a bug that looks exactly 100% precisely the same as my bug that I drew earlier, okay? I'm only going to give you the instructions once because they're easy and simple. You're good to go? Got your pen? All right. The bug is round. The bug has 8 legs grouped in pairs with 4 legs on the left and 4 legs on the right. In the pairs, one leg is longer than the other. The bug has 2 eyes on top of the body. The bug has 2 squiggly antennae. The bug has 2 pea-pod-shaped wings. The bug has a spot next to each wing. The bug has a triangular stinger on the bottom of the body. The bug has 2 feelers on each foot, one longer than the other, both coming from the same side of the leg. The bug has a round mouth placed between the 2 eyes. And the bug laid 5 square eggs to the left of the stinger. So well done. I'm going to show you my bug, and you have to put your hand up if your bug looks exactly the same as my bug. That's what my bug looks like. Anyone got a dead ringer? Close. Oh, it's got to be exact. Ooh, not bad. Not bad. Some of you are getting close, right? If we had time, I'd get you all to stand up in a circle and have a look at all of the bugs that you've drawn. But it's quite difficult to follow instructions like that, isn't it, and come up with something exactly the same. What were some of the points of difference in your bugs? So, the eggs, what's the deal there? Well, it was my point of view was different. So I was thinking that I was standing like on the other side of the bug, and that's why we've got probably got left and right mixed up. That usually happens when we do this, but it depends what way my paper was facing when I drew my bug and what angle I was looking at. That's pretty fundamental thing, isn't it? Any other things? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Your left is different to mine, and I didn't think about taking that into account. I just looked at it from my point of view. Yeah, so if we were giving directions, we would have ended up completely in the wrong place. Right, so your wings are going up the other way. Right, and again, thinking about what you already know about bugs. Depends a bit what you think a pea pod is as well. Like, people from different countries have completely different ideas about what a pea pod shape is. And so forth, and so on we go. We can look at a whole lot of ways where I've given what I think is a simple verbal instruction to you, and everyone's heard it really differently, and everyone's produced a different drawing. And there we have the deficits of verbal communication and why telling our support workers what to do often doesn't work out for us. So you need to be aware that different things mean different things to different people. We all come with different background knowledge and life experience, and we look at things from different perspectives, and it affects how we communicate with each other. And actually, communication mishaps happen all the time, every day, I think, especially with verbal communication. We also can't process spoken language at the same pace. So some people might have needed to hear the instructions a few times. Others, if you've got a bit of ADHD like me, you want them to be much faster. You can't concentrate if things are too slowly said. Lots of things to think about. What could I have done differently to communicate better? I could have used a picture, couldn't I? Would have got there so much faster. Thank you. So using visual supports to communicate with anybody is actually turning out to be quite important. All the research is saying if we want effective communication in school, with each other, when we're training at universities, we'll always have visuals. There's more to it than that though, and I'll get to that in a second, but I think the most common mistake we make as families is using spoken words alone to communicate. And very few people, including ourselves, actually learn well by just reading or just listening to information. So when we're training our staff, we need to think about a little bit about what we're actually doing. Just understanding that there's some physical changes that need to take place in people's brains for them to learn something. We can't actually just expose people to something one time and expect them to learn it. Their brain has to rewire to be able to learn a new skill, and that takes time. That can take weeks or months. And I think something that happens as families is that we become so used to providing support for the people that we care about that we forget how much is involved in it, and what seems like, it's hardwired and automated for us is actually quite a complex thing for other people to learn. It takes some time, and they might need some support to do that. There's a summary up here of the types of activities that you might do in order to achieve those outcomes. So for that last one, 90% of what we say and do really suggests that things like role plays are quite powerful ways of teaching people how to do stuff if you want them to remember. That's good information for us to have, because we're all busy and time limited, and we just want to be most efficient that we can be. So if doing a role play is going to get you there faster than talking for an hour, then let's do a role play. It'd be a good thing to do. So what this actually means is that we need to put our focus on the pointers in the blue box. But in most trainings that we see, it's reading, listening and seeing pictures, and that's where most people put their energy, but that's the least efficient way of doing it. So let's talk about what it means to be more efficient. 50% of what we see and hear. So this means strategies like watching somebody else do the task, making videos of what you expect. And before we go on with this and you start thinking, oh, this is going to be a lot of work, we just train our support staff to film everything all the time. Just get the camera out when you're not the person, unless they want to be filmed, but film yourself doing things. It's a really good tool for reflection, but that's how we build up a library of videos to be able to teach other staff new things. So that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to invest a lot of time filming, but we get our staff involved in that. We also do things like film interviews with the person or with their network, talking about how support can happen and showing how that can happen. And we want to minimise face-to-face training time because, that can be tricky, can't it? So you're really busy and you get a new support worker at a time when you're really busy, and then, well, how does the training happen? So we put all of our training online. We use a platform called Podio, but there are different strategies that you can use to do that. But if you can get your videos and all your training stuff online so that people can access it on their computer, you're going to save yourself some time. And then the time that you do spend training your staff, ideally is time spent discussing. So they've already got the knowledge, and you're talking with them about how they're going to use that knowledge. Which leads into our next point. 70% of what we discuss, that's amazing. When we learn to be teachers, we learn about something called learning by talking. And that's that people learn best by talking. And there's some new research around that saying you're better off having a chat with the people on your table probably than you are listening to us too much. You're going to learn more by engaging in discussion around a topic. So that might be watching a training video and then discussing it with the worker, question and answer session. Could be looking at something and discussing the strengths of the person doing the tasks and how they could be improved, that kind of thing. And the last one, 90% of what we both say and do. So that means that being in simulated situations or doing role plays is a really powerful teaching tool. Obviously, you can't do that for every single task. So you want to pick and choose what strategy you use for what. If you're training a worker to be a good communication partner for someone who can't speak or has complex communication needs, then role play is probably essential for them to be able to learn that task, because that's a really highly skilled task. That's something where we'd put our energy. Okay, so some other ways of creating experience in scenarios. I do this a lot with families. Whenever something happens that you don't like, use the lemons to make lemonade. Write it up as a scenario, as a teaching scenario, and use it when you train your staff to make sure that thing never happens again. So write up the story, and then when you're training, saying, okay, what happened in this scenario? What should have happened here, and what could we do differently? So this is just one, this is a pretty sort of mundane example about a wheelchair, I guess, but actually wheelchair training is really important, and it's one of those skilled-based things that you definitely want to get right if you're a wheelchair user. So one time I took Eli out, he had a new wheelchair, took him trick-or-treating, walking around our community with his friends, and then we're on a narrow street and there's a car coming and I'm trying to get up onto the pavement because we were going along the road like people do at Halloween. And I can't remember the technical name for them, but the little kick thing at the back that you put your foot on to leverage the chair up, they weren't there. and I couldn't get up on the pavement, and there's a car coming, and they swerved out and they didn't hit us. That's a huge deal. So that's like a compulsory training scenario that we do with all our staff now, to make sure that kind of thing doesn't happen. You don't do anything to any piece of equipment without approval. So, and that kind of scenario is working for us. That's the stuff we invest in at the front end. Making your own training can seem daunting. Ours isn't finished yet to the point where I'd like it to be. I don't think that anyone can actually sit down and write their whole team training. I don't recommend that. I think it's overwhelming and exhausting and very daunting. What we do is we write it as we go. So as things happen and as the need is there for training, if you take those opportunities to make sure that you write your scenario and you get your films and think of activities, then over a period of time your training can build up to be really good. Remember that this is a long-term proposition. So along with all the other stuff we've been talking about self-management, there's actually quite a lot to do, and we'll give up if we try and get it all perfect at the start. But I've allowed myself, 2 years to get my training to where I want it to be. And then from that point, we just adjust it as we go over time. Just to say as well, what I'm doing now, because we're nearly a decade into this, is we've got a lot of modules. So we're breaking them up into sections, and I'm presuming that team training for my team members will take 12 months, because we're actually expecting quite a lot of them now in terms of communication and literacy and all kinds of things. So we've broken all the modules up, and we've got induction models and we've got some you do at 6 weeks, some at 3 months, some at 6 months, some at 9, and then some at 12, which is the more advanced stuff. And I guess that's the other thing to remember, that some things are more urgent to learn than others, so we put those at the front end. What that means though is if we get super enthusiastic support workers who want to, they can do the whole lot really quickly and become amazing, but it also just allows people some time to spread it out and to learn it over a longer period of time. So just another example would be, what about workers who come in for very short shifts? So my friend Jo, who I mentioned this morning, had hack workers coming in and doing 1 hour shifts with her son, and it was just impossible. You know, they'd come in, they'd only stay for 6 to 8 weeks, and then they'd change them. She'd tell them what to do, and then they'd forget by the next week, and she's like, there's no point doing this, you know, just maybe you won't have a shower. I don't know what I'm going to do, it's too hard. When I supported Jo to figure out how to approach this, you got this sense from the triangle we had up before that there are things we do where we're passive. So listening, reading, watching, we're being passive, and we know, you know, as teachers, that people don't learn so well when they're passive. What we need to do is to get people to be active. That means they've got a responsibility to take, or a role in terms of what they're doing. So I said to Jo, instead of telling people what to do, you need to ask them what to do. So you model it, or ideally, if you can, film what you're going to do, and tell them that when you've finished modelling it to them, these are the questions you're going to ask. So while they're watching, they've got questions and they're looking for the answers rather than passively watching, right? This is, all teachers know this, and you can use this very well. Give them the questions at the start and they're much more likely to learn the answers. They've got to figure the answers out themselves, right? You're not telling them. So that worked for Jo really well. And then the second stage of that was then to do the task alongside them, and before each step, ask them to tell you what they remember about the next step. So we've done this, what are we going to do next and how do we do it, and get them to explain it. So it's getting the worker to explain the task to you more than you explaining it to them. And it was awesome. It just solved the problem, what seemed like an impossible problem for her, from moving the worker from a passive role to an active role in terms of learning. So it's doable, even for those really short jobs. I think the other thing that we do a lot of is engaging our workers in designing and reviewing training, and that means we're not doing all the work. My worker, Matt, who I love very much, and I had got to the point where we were arguing a lot about what should happen and why. And actually he's got the right to do that now, because he's been with me for a very long time, and with Eli, and he's had lots of training, so he gets to challenge me on stuff. But we managed to stop having discussions about things when we started writing things down. So instead of arguing about it, I'd write down how I thought it should be, and he would write down how he thought it should be, and we'd come to an agreement. And what we've ended up with is some really good training and some really good alignment between both of us, because what we realised was that when we were arguing, we actually weren't hearing each other at all anyway, and we weren't getting anywhere with it. So recording it was a good thing to do. You can use movies. I love using movies because they're so much fun, and you know, having a discussion's a good thing. So if you're watching something and then you're discussing it, that's awesome. There's lots of movies out there that we can use. Annie's Coming Out's a good one. Little Britain's a good one. If you watch Andy and Lou, it's fun, you know. It's much more fun to watch a movie or a part of a movie and then have a conversation about it. This is especially good for the values stuff, right? Watching films that represent people with disability in different ways and different ideas about it. To summarise giving feedback, we need to be careful about when we give it to people, and support workers can say they get quite hurt when they receive negative feedback if it's not in the right way, so we never give it on the spot. Always make a time to give it, and there's some stuff around being balanced, so you always give positive feedback first, and you need to give more positive feedback than negative feedback. The risk is your workers are going to feel bad, and we don't want that. We want workers that feel good. If things are not working in our team, we have to take responsibility. We're the employers and we're the parents and the leaders, and we need to banish from our conversation any language that's blaming our staff for things. And I've had to train myself to do this. I think if I'm not getting what I want, where is it in my training? And more often than not, it's not there. So if I haven't asked for it and I haven't taught people about it, then they're not going to be able to give it to me. So it all starts with myself. So if I'm giving feedback because someone's not doing the right thing, always start with telling them what the right thing is to do. So here's what it looks like. And we avoid criticising people as much as possible. It's really just saying, I need to get better at communicating what it is that we want here. I used to deliver pizza for Domino's when Eli was younger, and I loved it because they had a system where you couldn't leave shift without someone saying something nice to you about what you'd done on your shift that day. And I knew it was a system, and I knew it was what they did for everyone, and I still loved it. I still used to leave feeling really good about myself because at the end of every shift, someone would appreciate me. And I try to do that with my workers as well. And even if I'm not there, I try to send them a positive text message every shift saying, really appreciate you, loving what you're doing, helping them to feel good about themselves and appreciated. And that's one of the best things we can do to make sure our teams are feeling good and giving good support.